Welcome, everybody, to today's Coffee and Coaching Club. We are accompanied by the Digital Gremlins as part of this production. And today I'm talking about 3 keys to compelling presentation skills and introducing once again Margaret, Marvelous Margaret, my program manager, and she is going to explain once again, in case you just came in, how to put some Q&A questions or any comments in the chat box.
And again, at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a PC or tablet, there is a Q&A button. If you click that, it will open the Q&A panel and you can ask any questions you have right there. If you're on a phone, if you are logged into Zoom, you should still have Q&A capabilities.
Okay, so ever given a talk and kind of gotten that view from the audience, or been in an audience when you're one of those people thinking, oh my goodness, when is this person ever going to stop talking? So what is the first key to being a compelling presenter? And notice this is part 1, because guess what? 3 keys, there are going to be 3 parts to this. The first key to being a compelling presenter, here's a duh answer, having a compelling presentation. Oh, that makes sense, doesn't it? So here's some scary statistics that I looked up in prepping for you today. Researchers once ran a test, and they were basically measuring how much of a presenter's message or talk sticks in the mind of the audience after so much time. So immediately, get this, after a 10-minute talk, the listeners in this study only remembered about half of what was said. The next day, a quarter of what was said. And by a week later, it was 10%. We can only imagine what it would be after a month, probably zip. So what do we do to change this horrible reaction? What is the first characteristic of a compelling presentation? It is memorable. You want people to remember what you're going to be saying. It's got to be something that will stick in people's brains. So let's talk about what elements you can use that will create that memorable 10%. We're not even aiming for people to remember 25 or 50% after a week or so, but we want people to remember at least 10%. That's kind of a reasonable expectation based on that research. And people remember stories. People love stories. Since the days we sat in caves around a fire sharing the stories of people, people love stories. So if you have a story that relates to what you want to share, that's wonderful. If you can compare something that you're sharing to familiar ideas or practices, link it in people's minds to something they already know, that helps them remember whatever you're sharing. And of course, visuals. We are visual people. Even if we weren't originally, so much of our world these days is visual, that when you have visuals, like slide presentations, it's much easier to remember stuff. And if you can have some examples of the items in your stories or the comparisons, people remember examples, especially if you can find some that are amusing. People tend to remember amusing or striking examples. And repetition. Repetition is the mother of learning, and I will have more to say about that a little further on. So that's the first thing, that a presentation should be memorable. What's the next thing? It's got to be organized in a way that makes sense to the people who are hearing it. Have you ever been in a presentation and the person's message wandered all over the place, and it was really hard to keep track of what the heck this person was saying and what point was this person making? And so what do you know? What do you do? Basically, if you've done any sales, you always know that a confused mind not only says no, but when it's a presentation, the confused mind doesn't even remember why or what it said no to. And especially if you're using your presentation as a sales presentation, or you're promoting some particular action, or want people to donate to your worthy cause, you don't want people to be confused. So what makes a message sound organized? You're doing this verbally, and you may not have a slide presentation, you may not have a handout. How can you make your message sound organized? And what I always recommend is using what I call a verbal outline. That makes it really easy for people to know where you're at in the talk, and it helps them keep in mind some of the things that you've shared. So let's take a look at what I mean by a verbal outline. You have a powerful opening statement or a question. I absolutely love opening my presentations with a question, because when you ask people a question and you pause, that immediately engages their attention. So, for example, do you have any idea what the most important thing is to creating a compelling presentation? Pause. And then, of course, I gave you my answer, being a compelling presentation. Well, that was the wrong question. Being a compelling presenter, the most important thing is you need a compelling presentation to present. And then you mentioned 3 things you're going to share. I'm going to be sharing these 3 characteristics with you of a compelling presentation. And you label them. First item is this, and the second item is this, and the third item is that. So people know exactly what you're sharing. And by the way, 3 items is really, in my opinion, the ideal. You really don't want to strain people's brains beyond 3 items, unless, of course, you're handing out some type of take-home document where you can maybe do 5. But everything I've read said that an odd number of items is the best thing to share with people. For some reason, odd numbers of items are more easily remembered than even numbers. Don't ask me why, I have no clue. And then you review the 3 items that you just shared. There's your repetition, right? This is what 3 things I'm going to tell you. Here's thing 1, here's thing 2, here's thing 3. And I just shared with you, these are the 3 important things about this topic, blah, 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 blah. And you conclude with a powerful closing statement. And this could possibly be a single call to action if it's appropriate. If you're asking people to sign up for a free gift, if you're inviting people to go to a website, if you're inviting them to take out their cell phone and text a number to some automatic something or other. 1 single call to action. If you ask people to do more than 1 thing, they're going to be thinking, well, should I do this or should I do that? And they do nothing. So it's a single call to action. Basically, you want to give people a really clear idea of what you're sharing. So it could be a plan or a task and an action you want them to take. Keep it simple. It's a verbal outline that enables people to know exactly where you are in your presentation. And by the way, that also gives them an idea of how much longer it'll be, so that they have a good idea of whether you're speaking for 10 minutes, 20, half hour, whatever. So here's the 3rd characteristic. Notice 3 things. I want you to remember all 3. And it's got to be worth the time. It's got to be worthwhile. It's got to be a worthwhile message. It's got to be worth your time to spend the time creating it. And it's got to be worth the time of people who are listening to it. Have you ever been at a talk and you leave and you say to your friend, boy, that was a waste of time? You don't want anybody to say that about your message. So what are some aspects of creating a worthwhile presentation? First of all, worthwhile presentations cover important topics, things that are of vital interest to people, that they really want to listen to and hear about. As I'm recording this, we're in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, and so everybody's listening very carefully to all the information they can get about keeping themselves and their loved ones safe, because it's a really important topic right now. So if you're talking about an important organization for which you're raising money, for example, I did a lot of fundraising for the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and I knew very well that a lot of people don't care diddly squat about classical music, even though the orchestra also has pops and jazz concerts. But anyway, people do care about music education and the fact that a lot of schools have cut it out. So I would talk about the wonderful music education program for close to 1,000 students who come to the hall on Saturdays for classical and jazz groups, and all the visits that the orchestra musicians make to the schools. So you talk about something that's important. And then you provide some valuable information. For example, I'm listening, as I'm sure Margaret and many of you who are here during this particular time in our history, listening carefully to what people are saying about how to keep yourself safe during a pandemic and how to avoid getting or spreading the coronavirus. So people, when it's important and valuable information, people listen carefully. And the other thing is a worthwhile presentation can open people's minds to new ideas and possibilities. Everybody's figuring out what's the best way to get through this without getting sick, and making sure that I don't get other people sick. So definitely people are open to new ideas in a situation like this, but any topic you talk about can have new ideas that you can share with people in a way that will open their minds to and basically educate them about the topic that you're discussing. And the other thing is that a worthwhile presentation does inspire people to take positive action. And this can be in terms of a sales presentation. It can be in terms of promoting something like safer ways of operating in a pandemic. It can be something as simple as how to save money and improve your house's windows and doors and so forth, and cut down on your heating expenses and save on water and all kinds of things. It can be something, and any topic can have something that will be of value to people, one idea that they can take away and do something positive to make their world and our world a better place. And basically, at the end of your presentation, you want people to say, you know, I really loved what she had to say, or his message was so well crafted. You know, those three things, they make so much sense. I really loved hearing that, particularly that item number 3, that really spoke to me, whatever. You want people at the end of your message to feel that their time was well spent. They understood what you had to say, and it made sense to them. And you kept their, what I like to call their eager attention throughout your entire remarks. So the presentation itself is the foundation piece. Now, when I get on to part 2 of this, I'm going to be talking about the actual presentation skills, so that you don't get up there and start reading your speech like this and you are sounding boring. You don't want to be boring. But the basic thing you need, the foundational piece, and maybe it's because I'm a writer and a former magazine editor, but I really believe that the foundational piece of effective communication and communication confidence, knowing that what you have to share is of value, that is your compelling presentation. So I wanted to share a quote that I ran across from Winston Churchill. Sir Winston Churchill was probably one of the stellar communicators of the last century. He basically got England through World War II without losing heart. I mean, he was an amazingly compelling orator. And this is what he had to say, which I just love. If you have an important point to make, don't try to be subtle or clever. Use a pile driver. Hit the point once, then come back and hit it again. Then hit it a third time, a tremendous whack. So I better take his advice and just remind you that the first key is part 1 of the 3 keys to being a compelling presenter. Is the first key is having a compelling presentation. And I shared with you 3 characteristics of compelling presentations. The first one being that they're memorable. people really like them, and they, boy, I got to remember that story he told. I got to share that story with my friends. That was such a great story, and they're well organized. Boy, that really made sense. I understood exactly where that person was, exactly what they were sharing. They shared 3 points. I actually only remember the second one. That was the one that really struck me. But they were really good points, and I really understood where that person was and where they were going. And boy, that was certainly a good use of my time. I learned so much, and I'm really impressed with the knowledge of the speaker. That person's really an expert and an authority, and anytime that person is available and speaking, I want to be there to listen. So those are the 3 characteristics of a compelling presentation. So let me conclude with my standard 2 invitations. I'm inviting you to, first of all, our next Coffee and Coaching Club. I'm going to be expanding more on successful presentations, creating copy that converts. A lot of times, if you are in business or if you are promoting a nonprofit and want people to donate, you are basically selling. And so I'm going to be discussing in terms of creating a successful presentation that gets people to take that single call to action that moves them ahead in whatever you are presenting or promoting. So that is going to be our next Coffee and Coaching Club meeting. The one after that, by the way, will be part 2. I'm not going to leave you hanging with only part 1, I promise. But I wanted to expand some more on creating copy that converts, because just giving you the verbal outline is not helpful if you are looking to create a presentation that actually gets people to do something. And then I would love for you to take advantage of my complimentary communication confidence assessment. I have long maintained, and you may have heard this from me before if you've been in my community for a while, public speaking, which is number 1 on the list of fears. Public speaking, in my view, is any time you talk to somebody other than yourself. It's not just giving speeches. It's networking. It's calling people on the phone. It's having conversations in the grocery line. It's family dinners. It's social events. Those are all times when you are communicating. And so it helps to know which area is an area where you feel truly confident and which area is an area where you don't feel so confident. And those are the areas where you'd like to focus your attention. So I invite you to fill out that assessment for your own information, if nothing else. And you can find it at my website, vibrantvocalpower.com/CCA for Communication Confidence Assessment. And here's a frank bribe to you to fill it out. Every month I'm going to pick one person who fills out the assessment and send you a copy of my international best-selling book, Empowering Business Owners to Overcome Speaking Fears, whether you're talking with one person or 1,000. One person or 1,000 kind of covers the gamut of public speaking being anytime you talk to somebody other than yourself. So that's my bribe. And once again, the URL to get that assessment is vibrantvocalpower.com/CCA. And that brings us to time for some questions and answers, or perhaps some people might have some comments as well. I'm always open to hearing other people's comments and thoughts. Margaret, the guardian of the Q&A box.
Well, and just a reminder, if you have other questions that come up while we're going through these, please do type them right into that Q&A box. Let me start out with this one.
Excuse me, remind people where it is in case they came on.
Down at the bottom of your screen, if you hover down at the bottom of your screen, you should see a button that says Q&A, and that'll open up the Q&A panel. So I'm going to give you one that actually is sort of near and dear to my heart as well. So thanks, Bob, for sharing this one. So many presentations start with about me or about my company. That always bores me. Is it really needed?
Okay, I am so glad, Bob, you mentioned this, because one of the things I didn't really delve into as part of this is you are absolutely 100% right. That is absolutely the worst way to start any kind of presentation. The ideal is that you are introduced by somebody and you give somebody your introduction, which mentions that and which basically talks about your any honors you received or anything that really speaks to your authority and expert status and gets people excited about listening to you. And I think one of these days, Margaret, maybe I should do a training on creating a good introduction. Because when somebody else is bragging about you, it comes from a whole different place psychologically, emotionally, and how the audience receives it. And that way, you don't have to do that because people are already psyched up to listen to you. As I mean, I don't get up there, for example, and say that I was awarded, 2017 top speaking coach of the year, blah 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 blah. When you start going into that I thing, people think you're just, a self-centered narcissist who's busy puffing yourself off, and nobody likes to hear that. So, Bob, kudos to you for bringing that up. That's exactly the wrong way to start. And thank you for the idea of something else I can share on these coffee and coaching clubs, because a good introduction does all that for you and gets the audience excited to hear from you.
So if that's a topic that would interest you, drop that into the Q&A or the chat. Would love some feedback on building a good introduction so that others can use in your behalf.
Right.
So let us know.
And any other topics that you're interested in, because basically these coffee and coaching club meetings, if I may call them a meeting, are designed to be of service to you. So if there's a particular communication issue that's, kind of, that you'd like me to cover, do drop that in the chat as well.
Q&A.
Q&A. Q&A, sorry.
And we're getting a number of people saying they would like more about writing a good intro. And keep putting your feedback in Q&A on that, folks. We'd love that. Oh, Marjorie, this one, I'm surprised you didn't have vocal variation in these three things.
Okay.
This is someone who knows you well, I think, that asked this one. So thank you, Sue.
Okay, so Sue, that's actually part two. Today I was talking about, this is part one. The general topic was the 3 keys to compelling presentations. Part one, the first key is the presentation itself. And you have already asked me basically what I'm going to be talking about in part two, which will be the presentation after the next one on Copy That Converts. I am going to be talking about how to speak in a tone of voice and how to present yourself, the physical presentation, both of how you present yourself in your body, as it were, and how you dress and so forth, and your voice and vocal variety. Because as I implied when I was talking a little before, getting up there and reading a speech is a recipe for disaster, communication disaster. And I will be sharing not only how to avoid that, but to come across as a powerful and engaging presenter who keeps the eager attention of your audience. You start with your amazing presentation. This was part one today. Then you go on with your powerful and engaging and compelling presentation skills, and that does include vocal variety.
So we have 1 minute left. I want to jump in with something to put in the next presentation. Do you have a good resource on crafting compelling stories / anecdotes to convey your content that you recommend?
Well,
So I think we can save the answer to that for the April presentation. And if you're not registered for that yet, Kim, it's at coffeeandcoaching.club, and you can register for that there.
Well, no, Margaret, I know you didn't want to put me on the spot, but I just happen to have a book here that I've been reading, and it's by Donald Miller. And the book is called Building a Story Brand. And story brand, he has as one word, building a story brand by Donald Miller. And aren't you impressed that I could come with it?
I have sitting right next to me, Wired for Story by Lisa Cron, C-R-O-N.
Oh, so you see, we're both stellar stars here in coming up with suggestions. So thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry we had problems with the gremlins to start, but you know, that's the world, that's the digital world. So that is the end of the story, and I look forward to joining you at our next meeting. Bye-bye.